Welcome to Module 5 in the 2023 Test Security Training Series. OSSE's Office of Assessments has developed a series of training modules to prepare LEA Test Integrity Coordinators, LEA Assessment Managers, LEA Test Coordinators, and Non-Public School Test Coordinators for the Spring 2023 Statewide Assessment Administration. There are 6 required training modules. These modules are required for all LEA assessment managers, LEA test integrity coordinators, LEA test coordinators, and non-public school test coordinators, including those responsible for access and alternate access, MSAA, DLM, DC Science, and PARC. The modules follow the order of activities in the assessment coordination timeline. Upon the completion of all training modules, you will need to complete a quiz and certification form verifying that you have viewed all content. A score of 80% or higher out of 120 points on the quiz will serve as the official attendance and completion of the 2023 test security training. In Module 5, we will cover test administration, prohibited actions, and incident reporting. Please note that Module 4 also covers some aspects of test administration. This assessment coordination timeline shows the activities needed in order to complete statewide assessment administration in the District of Columbia. The color and shape of each icon indicates who is performing each action, which is outlined on this slide and discussed in Module 0. Starting in Module 1, these icons appear in the top right corner of slides to indicate where in the coordination process these activities occur. You may find it helpful to have this timeline available for reference as you go through each training module. Each training module provides detailed information on the activities in the assessment coordination timeline. In this module, we will cover the steps highlighted in the orange dotted line. Administer statewide tests to students, monitor and support staff, and submit incident reports to OSSE. We will now continue to cover test administration. As a reminder, OSSE's goal is to develop and provide statewide assessments that yield fair and accurate results. To do this, schools and local education agencies are to administer assessments in consistent and standardized conditions. The best way for us to support schools and LEAs in administering quality assessments is to ensure educators understand and recognize acceptable and unacceptable assessment practices. We will continue to cover administering statewide tests to students. All authorized personnel are required to maintain the security and integrity of all testing materials, locations, and content during the testing window. Any deviations, breaches, or incidents must be reported to OSSE as soon as they are discovered. The following directives must be followed by all authorized personnel during test administration for all statewide assessments. Test administrators and proctors must follow all test security. Under the Testing Integrity Act of 2013, all authorized personnel are prohibited from the following: test fraud, identified as academic coaching, cheating, and test tampering. The following slides will go more into detail about each of these prohibited actions. Failure to comply with these prohibitions is a violation of test security. This slide will cover the prohibited actions of test fraud and coaching. The following actions are considered test fraud or academic coaching and are prohibited during administration of all statewide assessments. The reviewing, reading, or looking at test items or student responses before, during, or after administering a statewide assessment unless specifically permitted in the test administrator manual. 2 key points. Authorized personnel should not interact with the content on any secure assessment. Authorized personnel should not look at or review any test content or student responses, including on scratch paper. Also, assisting students in any way with answers to test questions using verbal or nonverbal cues before, during, and after administering assessments is prohibited. Examples of such may include answering test or content-specific questions posed by students, interacting in any way with student responses, including on scratch paper, providing verbal or nonverbal cues to indicate performance, for example, saying good job, check your work, or shaking your head. These are not provided in the test administrator's manual, therefore they are prohibited. A test administrator may need to read test content if they are administering an accommodation that requires it. For example, if a student has a human reader or human signer, that is not prohibited, as long as it is in their IEP or 504 plan. In these cases, test administrators are to follow all appropriate directions in the test administrator manual to ensure they are maintaining test security. This slide will cover prohibited actions of cheating. The following actions are considered cheating and are prohibited during administration of all statewide assessments: allowing any form of cheating, failing to actively supervise students at all times during test sessions, allowing students to view or practice secure test items before or after the scheduled testing time, allowing students to complete a single part or DC Science test unit over multiple days, allowing more than the allotted unit time to students without an approved extended time accommodation, using or allowing students use of unapproved electronics or cell phones during the administration of a statewide assessment, allowing students to use notes, references, or other aids unless the test administrator manual or an approved accommodation specifically allows it. Here are some examples of cheating: giving students answers, changing answers or responses of student work at any point, administering a single part or DC Science unit over multiple days, even for students with an extended time accommodation. Once they have begun a single unit, they may only have until the end of the school day to complete it. Allowing students to use notes, textbooks, or other aids that they do not have an accommodation for. This slide will cover the prohibited actions of test tampering. The following actions are considered test tampering and are prohibited during administration of all statewide assessments: altering students' responses in any manner, photocopying or in any way reproducing or disclosing secure test items or other materials related to statewide assessments, altering the test procedures stated in the formal instructions that accompany the statewide assessments, having in one's personal possession secure test materials except during the scheduled testing dates and times, making or having in one's possession answer keys before the administration of the statewide assessment. Note: the MSAA and DLM assessments allow or require certain materials to be printed and reviewed by test administrators prior to administration. Consult the manuals for each assessment for further details. Additional examples of the prohibited action of test tampering include leaving secure test materials in a non-secure location or unattended by authorized personnel, making a false certification on any statewide assessment forms established and required by OSSE, being present in the test environment or handling the test materials for one's own child or family member, failing to count all test booklets and answer documents, and or failing to ensure that all pupils have properly logged off the computer test system before allowing anyone to leave the testing room, failing to observe the test material chain of command procedures as outlined in the school test security plan. In addition to the guidance in the Test and Integrity Act, the Assessment Administration manuals clearly specify what can and cannot be said during secure testing. Test administrators are expected to follow the scripts provided in the assessment administration manuals. Test administrators and proctors may provide support to students with logging in. Technology coordinators may address technology issues such as computers freezing, batteries dying, or students getting kicked off the platform. Note, this does not include providing guidance on how to use the item functions or accessibility features on the platform. Practice with the platform functionalities must be completed prior to testing. Exceptions to prohibited actions are covered on this slide. Failure to comply with the prohibitions will not be considered a violation if an action is necessary to provide for an accommodation explicitly identified in an IEP Section 504 or EL plan, or limited to supporting students to stay on task and focused. Supporting students to stay on task and focus includes announcing to the entire testing group the time remaining on the test, announcing to the entire testing group reminding students to stay on task, announcing to the entire testing group reminding them to abide by school and/or LEA rules and/or processes. Verbally, but with minimal disruption to other students, waking up a student who has fallen asleep while testing. Verbally, but with minimal disruption to other students, addressing an individual student's disruptive behavior. Reminding individual students to stay on task and focus during the assessment. And finally, providing visual cues to an individual student to remain on task. These items are exceptions to prohibited actions. Test security reminder exceptions. Exception to prohibited actions, test fraud, and coaching. If students need a specific electronic device or aid that isn't part of a standard accommodation, a unique accommodation request must be submitted to OSSE for approval. Exceptions to prohibited actions, cheating. A test administrator may need to read test content if they are administering an accommodation that requires it, for example, a human reader or a human signer. In these cases, test administrators are to follow all appropriate directions in the assessment-specific manuals to ensure they are maintaining test security. Exceptional circumstances during test administration are covered on this slide. Absences, makeups. Makeup testing should be included in the schedule in the school test security plan. Schools may schedule makeup tests across grades or subjects in the same room, but timing should be the same. Students are not allowed to return to a testing session which they have exited after starting, except if approved by OSSE. Homebound students. Homebound students must participate in testing. The test monitor works with the test integrity coordinator to determine how these students will be assessed and notifies OSSE in the school test security plan. Any non-traditional in-person testing requests, for example, testing at an alternate site or testing in specific hours, must be included in a school's test security plan. Additional exceptional circumstances during test administration include homeschool students. Homeschool students may participate in testing, but testing is voluntary. If a homeschool student wishes to participate, the test monitor works with the LEA to determine a plan for participation and notifies OSSE in the school test security plan. Significant medical emergencies. Students experiencing medical conditions that substantially prevent them from participating in instruction may apply for an assessment medical exemption with support from a treating physician. The student school must submit the statewide assessments medical exemption form to OSSE for review. Students who have to quarantine due to potential COVID-19 exposure do not qualify for a medical exemption. It is recommended that schools test early in the window if practical and build out a robust makeup testing window to ensure all students are able to test during the statewide window. Weather, natural disaster, fire alarm, or school-wide emergency. If there is a school-wide emergency requiring evacuation, follow the LEA school-wide emergency protocols. In the event of an emergency, it is expected that schools will first ensure student safety, then document and submit an incident report to OSSE. LEAs must ensure that all eligible students enrolled at their LEA, including students in non-public schools, participate in statewide assessments. While LEAs are responsible for coordinating with the non-public schools to confirm students' test registrations, the non-public schools are responsible for maintaining test security and reporting test security incidents that occur on their campuses to OSSE. Non-public responsibilities include compliance with Test Integrity Act of 2013, Amendment of 2015, Test Security Guidelines and Vendor Manuals, the creation and submission to OSSE of School Test Security Plan for students enrolled at that site. We will now cover submitting incident reports to OSSE. When incidents, deviations, or issues occur during test administration, they should be promptly communicated to OSSE. Incident report via the OSSE support tool, hotline, or OSSE website. All breaches to test security and test integrity during test administration can be submitted to OSSE using the OSSE support tool, the OSSE assessment hotline, or through the OSSE website. Accommodation misadministration should be submitted as incident reports. School Test Security Plan, minor deviations. Minor deviations from the testing plan may include a change in authorized personnel, minor timing changes, changes in the information presented in the approved school test security plan. Changes to the approved testing schedule should be reported by uploading a new test schedule into the school test security plan. Test security file. All reported test security integrity incidents should be included in the test security file. Additional test administration concerns not resulting in a breach of the security of test materials, test contents, or testing devices should also be included in the test security file. When reporting incidents to OSSE, it is important that the test incident request form is completed with detailed and specific information related to the incident. Doing so will allow OSSE to review and make a determination on how to proceed or what additional information is needed in a timely manner. The goal should be to ensure that any students impacted by the incident are able to complete testing where applicable before the close of the test window. Incident reports should contain, at a minimum, the information listed on this slide. The name and role of all authorized personnel involved in the incident, the name and 10-digit state student ID, the SSID, of any students involved, the test unit or section affected. Any steps the school has already taken to resolve the issue should all be detailed and specific when reporting. The following should be documented via an incident report to OSSE. Student becomes ill or injured and cannot complete a testing session they have already started. Student or staff member is in possession of a cell phone or unauthorized device or uses said device in an active testing environment. Students and/or staff take actions that could constitute cheating or coaching. Students and/or staff are in possession of materials that could constitute as cheating. Secure testing materials are lost or left unsupervised. Student does not receive the appropriate accommodations. All students must leave the test environment due to an emergency or drill. A technical issue causes students to not complete an active testing session before the close of a school day. The following do not need to be documented with an incident report. technical issues that cause minor delays in test timing for a student or group of students, assigning a student a different device during testing, student behavior that does not disrupt a test session or interfere with that student's or other students' ability to complete the test session, substituting test administrators or proctors. The first three issues listed should be documented in the school's test security file. The fourth should be documented by updating the school's test schedule. There are three ways that an incident report can be submitted to OSSE. If you have access to the OSSE Support Tool Quick Base application, also known as OST, you can submit an incident report through that tool. Other authorized personnel and others who wish to submit an incident report can also do so using the form linked on the OSSE Test Security and Incident Reporting webpage, or by calling the OSSE Assessment Hotline at area code 202-304-3269. Note, the assessment hotline is only active Monday through Friday from 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. during active statewide assessment administration. There are a few ways to update your school test security plan after it has been approved. If you have a minor deviation to your approved school test security plan, such as a change in test administrator or small timing adjustments, for instance, starting late due to a minor technology issue, you should log this information in Section 13, Minor Deviations and Testing Updates in your school test security plan on an ongoing basis. If your testing schedule changes or your list of authorized personnel changes, please update those attachments in your school test security plan. As a follow-up to submitted incident reports, OSSE may request a fact-finding inquiry or a plan to improve be completed by the school during testing. These are only required if OSSE alerts the LEA or school. And these documents should be uploaded as attachments in your plan as well. As a test security reminder, incident reports must be submitted to OSSE as soon as potential test security violations are discovered. It is essential that OSSE has time to mitigate any issues that arise from an incident as soon as possible. This concludes Module 5, Test Administration, Prohibited Actions, and Incident Reporting. You can now move on to Module 6, Administration Closeout and Reporting. If you have questions about OSSE assessment policies or specific assessment programs, please feel free to use the information on this slide to reach out to the appropriate member of the OSSE Office of Assessments.